Today I'm going to be installing the Prius off-road lift kit for 2004 to 2009 Toyota Prius. Pair of gloves, hammer, body panel removal tool, a pry bar, a 3/8 or 1/2 inch breaker bar, a 12 millimeter wrench, 14 millimeter wrench, 17 millimeter, and 19, a 6 millimeter hex or Allen wrench, a little extension, needle nose pliers, a 10 millimeter, 12, 14, 17, 19, and 21 millimeter sockets, a screwdriver just in case, a isn't necessary but it's very helpful, 1/2 inch impact wrench, and 3/8 impact wrench. First thing you want to do, there's a little tab right here. You're going to pop this off like that. It's going to show the 14 millimeter nut for the windshield wiper. And I also forgot to mention you're going to need some tape of some kind. And just get a little piece, mark off where your windshield wiper is on both sides. And once you have that, you're going to take your 14 millimeter and a ratchet, or if you have the impact, you can use that. So take your 14 millimeter and your impact wrench or a ratchet, whatever you have. You're going to take this off. And like I said in the instructions, hold on to the bolt. You're going to pop this off just by wiggling it. Put the nut back on. And set your wiper to the side. Then you're going to open your hood. There'll be two here and here. Going to use a 14 millimeter as well. Loosen those, and hold on to them. Pop this wiper arm off. Put these back. Once you have that done, in this corner there'll be a little push pin. You're going to use your screwdriver. You're going to push the center of it to pop it, and then you can pull it out. Same thing on the other side. Once you have those two pins popped out, you're just going to lift from the front. There's a little lip right here. Just lift here, and you can pop the whole thing loose. This is all going to come out as one piece. So you just pop it out. It comes out as two, but it's really one. You set that to the side. Then you have 5 10 millimeter bolts here holding the windshield wiper on. Take your 10 millimeter. You see they're pretty long. And there's a clip right here. Just push down on the front tab and wiggle it loose and it'll pop right off. Set that to the side. Use your body panel removal tool. There's these little clips here holding this wire loom in. Just go behind it and you can pry it off. You can also use your needle nose and come from behind and squeeze the tab and pull at the same time. Okay, wiper arm is removed. There's two 10 millimeter bolts here. Remove those. You can get this fuse bar out of the way. Again, put the bolts back. And once you have that loose, now there's bolts holding this metal piece in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm sorry, there's 9. So you're going to loosen all those, and those are all 10 millimeter as well. And then this whole piece comes right out. So that's all you're going to need to do under the hood. You see now that we're exposing the strut towers there, over there. Let's go and lift the car first, and then we'll come back. You'll also need a jack stand, and if you want to be comfortable, a seat as well. Okay, once you have the car jacked up, take your 21 millimeter, loosen the lug nuts. Gonna remove the wheel. Right here is a 17 millimeter and a 6 millimeter hex is what you'll need. So it's easier to use the rounded side. So you put it on and then take your 17 millimeter, stick it inside because it's probably gonna wiggle loose. And then you just loosen this up. You pop this off. Take this off, set it to the side. So now what you're gonna have to do is take your jack, and we're gonna put the jack under here where the ball joint is. So again, like I said, take your jack, put it under the ball joint, you're gonna lift it up until the bolt becomes straight. Get your hammer out, whack it loose. There you go. Next, you're gonna loosen the bolt right here. This is 12 millimeter. That's gonna remove the brake line and the ABS sensor wire. So move that, put the bolt back in. Then you're gonna need the 19 millimeter wrench and 19 millimeter socket for these two bolts here. So with this, I take the wrench, put it on obviously the round side, and rest it on a rotor cover, whatever the thing is called. And then just hold it down, and then take your tool, your other wrench, ratchet, whatever, and bust it off. Now these are specific, so the top bolt, make sure you keep it in the correct orientation, stays on the top and the bottom on the bottom. Set the nuts to the side, take your hammer, just loosen your jack to relieve pressure on here. You don't want to pull them out, you just want to let them stay loose, that you can just wiggle them out. And then we're gonna go up top, these three nuts here. And you're gonna use a 12 millimeter on those. You're gonna loosen all three, take these two off and keep this one on. Just make it hand tight. All right, so you can see I loosened this one, just hand tight. These two are removed. Now we're going to remove these two bolts. So you can wiggle the brake to allow this to pop out, allow the bolts to pop out. May have to relieve more pressure on the ball joint. Like I said, just wiggle it and the bolts will come out. So here's the bottom one. I'm gonna keep that in front of me. I'm gonna take the top one, pull the top one out, put that on top of the bottom one. Now your whole strut is completely loose. This is why you keep that one bolt in, because this would just fall down. So now while you're holding the strut, loosen the top nut again and just keep holding it. So now we're just gonna wiggle this until the whole piece comes out. So now you can see, I already have the bracket on here. Now these are side specific. So what you want to do is when you're bolting this back up, you want the bracket, you want the arrow to be pointing to the passenger side of the car on the driver's side. So if you see, if I hold this bracket up, there's a bit of a difference. You'll see when you get the kit how the bottom bracket, this piece here, is further this way than the top bracket. So you want the bottom bracket to be closer to the engine than the top bracket. So then once you have this in, everything is just in reverse. Okay, so what I forgot to mention is you're also going to need a 13 millimeter wrench. And that'll tighten up these bolts here. So you're going to tighten these. If you have some Loctite, I'd put some Loctite on them. And then these studs use the factory nuts. So you slide these on and then slide a bolt in, and that's it. And now we'll go put it back on the car. Okay, so I have it bolted back in. I have one bolt on top just holding it in place. This way I can kind of move this around and position it correctly. So now when you have that done, you're going to need to move your knuckle to align the bolt holes. So you'll need your jack again, jack it into place to get everything to line up. Once you have it lined up, take your bolts again and maneuver it to get the bolt in place. Take your nuts, just loosely put them on hand tight. You don't need to go to town yet. Once you got those just loosely on, you're gonna go up top again and tighten the other two bolts. All right, and then after you do that, bolt up your ABS sensor and brake line again. And this is keyed, so you can't really screw it up. It's just a matter of getting it in the hole. That's what she said. So it goes ABS sensor bracket, and then the brake line on top of that, and then the bolt. Okay, that one you can tighten up, and I'll have the torque specs in the description. Again, this is loose, so that's fine. You're gonna take your 19 millimeter again, and same thing as before, hold it on one side and tighten it up on the other. Clearly my garage is not ready for YouTube prime time. Okay, tighten it up. Again, torque specs will be in the description. Once you got that done, I'm gonna jack this up so that the end link meets the strut. Loosely put the nut on. Okay, 17 millimeter and Allen key. Put that in. You can tighten this up. Get all that tight. You can loosen the jack and bolt up the tire. And you got that done, take your 21 millimeter. They're on hand tight, so you tighten them up. Go in a star pattern. And lower the car. Okay, once you have both sides done, you're gonna reinstall the top metal shield. Put those bolts back in. Again, just put them in hand tight and then tighten them down. And take your windshield wiper motor. It only goes one way, so you can't screw it up. Those are 10 millimeter bolts again. Once you got that in place, you're gonna take your cowl and install that. You're gonna slide this into the windshield when you put it back. So go over the bolt and slide up into the windshield. It's kind of a pain because there's a little notch in the middle that you have to kind of catch to make it look like one piece. There we go. Okay, then it'll click in. It's all in. Then use two 10 millimeter bolts right here for the relay. Bolt that in place. Clip your wire clamps back in. And as you can see, I forgot to reattach the wiper motor adapter. So lift that up and just pop it back in. And there's a little notch here where the hose goes and a white clip that you clip onto the piece of the cowling. Just push that on like that. And then you can bolt this all down or clip it all down. That. And then put your push pins on the end. We need to put the wiper arm back on here. Just line the wiper up to where you have your piece of tape. And these are 14 millimeters again. So I'm a little bit off. So let me adjust this. Then we'll get the other front one on once we close the hood. Your other front one bolted up here. Then pop the clip on And that's it. Front is installed. Just pull off your tape and the front's all set. So to start in the rear, you're going to take off the deck lid. Once you have that off, you're going to set that to the side. You can go back, pull out that bottom tray. There's a little handle right in the middle. Just stick your fingers in there and you can grab it and just lift that up, and you can set that to the side as well. And from there you have the two top covers on the side. You just lift that one off and you can see there's little notches right in there that connects to the fabric, and the other side just pulls right off. Set them to the side as well. So for this one, you're going to need a Phillips head screwdriver, and you just take that little nut out right there. Sometimes you could twist it off by hand, but you could just use a screwdriver. And just lift that out once it's loose. And just lift it out and it'll pop right out. For the battery cover, you're just going to lift up from right where that white logo is in the middle. Lift up the fabric and it'll pop out. It's only held in there by push pins. Then once you have that lifted up, we'll move on to the passenger side or driver side of the car. From this point, you're going to have push pins that you're just going to lift up. You're going to pop them out. They're on each side of the car. And once you have those loose, you'll be able to release the fabric that's connected to the rear seats, exposing the two 14mm bolts that you're going to need to loosen to remove the back panel of the seat. From here, you'll have the two battery carrier brackets on each side of the car. They're held in by 7 12mm bolts. You're going to loosen those, and to get to the back brackets bolts, you're going to have to remove the two rear seat backrests. So just take your 12mm socket, loosen up those bolts, and you'll be able to completely remove the bracket on both sides of the car. On the passenger side, there's going to be a vent for the battery. It's a plastic tube. It's going to be held in with two clips. There's going to be a blue plug that you just need to pop off the piece of plastic. And there's the two push pins there and there. And once you have those out, you can slide the plastic out from the battery, and it's hooked up to the hybrid battery fan. So you just pop that off, set that to the side, and you'll see you're exposing the other battery carrier bracket there and the 7 bolts that you'll need to remove. Once you have the brackets removed, you'll be able to see the nuts that hold the suspension in place. There's one on that side. That's the one you want to loosen up. You don't want to touch that one. That's actually welded to the body. And then if we go to the other side, you'll be able to see the other bolt right there. And you need to be careful around this area because you could see the orange cords there. Those are the hybrid battery cords. Be extremely careful. Use an extension to get to that other bolt. Okay, once you have that done, after you jacked up the car from the rear, you're going to start by taking the tire off with your 21mm socket. Okay, then set the tire and wheel to the side. Okay, from here you'll see I already have the kit installed. There's the bracket. And what you want to do is loosen up this one bolt here. It's a 13mm bolt. And that's what's basically holding the carrier in place, as well as the two other bolts. But that's the one exterior bolt that connects to the nut that's welded inside the car. So just loosen that up. Here's the 19mm nut that you're going to have to remove to get the strut off. It's just one nut, and then there's a washer behind it. So take your 19mm and you should be able to remove that. You might need some penetrating fluid if it's a little corroded, so be sure you have that on hand. Okay, there's the nut, there's the washer. Set that to the side. And this is where you're going to need your pry bar. You're going to pry off the, you're going to loosen the strut from the axle. Okay, so once you loosen that 13mm bolt up on top, you just want it loose. You don't want to pull all the way out. At this point, you should also have the two nuts that are holding the strut in place inside the car. You want them off. Now you're going to take your pry bar and you're going to pry against the strut at the bottom portion where it's bolted in. You're going to press against the axle. So you can see that's what I'm doing here, just trying to get the right position to pop it loose. You can also try pushing on the axle to allow it to slide off as well. But a pry bar is much, much easier. Okay, there you go. See, I broke it loose there. Okay, I'm removing that bolt now because we're going to remove the strut. So get that bolt completely out. And just wiggle the strut. You might need to wiggle the axle as well, or use the pry bar again if the strut went back into its position. Okay, so here's the bracket already installed. You're going to use the factory nuts to hold the bracket in place, and then you're going to use the nuts supplied with the kit to bolt it back into the car. You're going to take that bolt that you took out before, you're going to slide it inside the opening on one of the holes on one of the brackets. And it can be a little tight, but it will fit in. You just kind of have to wiggle it a few times. Yep, there you go, it just pops right in. And that's going to be the factory nut from inside the car, same on that side. And again, you're going to put some Loctite on those as well. While you have this out of the car, it'd be a good time to inspect your shocks for any leaks or anything that needs to be cleaned off before you bolt it back into the car. Okay, so now we're going to take the strut and we're going to put it back in place. And you're going to make sure you hold that bolt that you put in. That's what's going to hold it in place while you get everything where it's supposed to be. So find the hole, start screwing that bolt in by hand, and then you can let go of the strut and the bolt will hold it in place. Just like that. So you can see it's a little loose. So this will be a good time to have somebody else help you out. Here you can push down on the axle. You can see how it wiggles. So what you're going to do is you're going to push down and you're going to get the bolt back into the bottom of the strut. So you'll notice that when you're doing this, it doesn't want to go in all the way. So what you have to do, I'll show you in a second, is you're going to use the 19mm nut to slide the suspension back in place. So there's the nut. Just going to put it on the back side. You may need to move the strut around a little bit so that there's threads to get that nut on, as you can see I'm doing here. And once you have the nut in place, grab your 19mm socket. Okay, once the nut is in place, grab your 19mm socket and just tighten that down a little bit. Doesn't need to be super tight because you're going to be taking the nut off again. And you can see it slides in. And then just take the nut back off. And then you can put it back on just hand tight, just so that the strut doesn't come loose. But make sure you put your washer on first. And you want to keep this hand tight until you lower the car and the car is on the wheels. Okay, from this point you'll come inside, you'll see that the bolts are there in the correct position, so you can put the nuts back on them and tighten them down. So once you have all the bolts and the nuts tightened down and torqued up, you can put your wheel back on. Tighten down your lug nuts. Then you'll have to come back with a torque wrench to torque them down as well. From this point, it's everything in reverse. You're going to put all your brackets back, put your bolts back, put your rear seat back in, and that's it. The kit is installed. We have more stuff going on with the Hellcat coming soon. We have stuff going on the Audi coming soon, and on the 2018 Highlander Hybrid. So be sure to like, subscribe. There's going to be plenty more videos coming in the coming weeks. And thank you everybody for watching. Appreciate it. And thank you to Prius Off-Road for sending this kit out really early for me to do this installation and review. If you have any questions, be sure to leave a comment down below. And you can follow me on Instagram at HybridOffRoad. Thanks so much.